Hey everybody, it's Professor Diffley. This is Philosophy 255, Ethics and Social Work, Human Services. This is lecture video 2. We left off in lecture video 1. We had just finished the equity and equality. So just a recap of these. So you got equality of opportunity, which is mostly what is believed in the United States, the idea that everybody should have a fair access to opportunity, to get to go to school, that sort of thing. Equality of opportunity is the other alternative here, and that says that everybody should be guaranteed the same basic living standard, and you do that by distributing resources and making sure everybody is treated ends up in the same spot. So opportunity says everybody should be given the same chance to move up. Quality opportunity says everybody should get the same result no matter what, or at least a basic result. And equity is the newer version of this. And equity says that everybody should be treated fairly, but however, some are more deserving than others, or more in need of help with more resources. So this tries to level the playing field. It recognizes, again, equity, that quality opportunity isn't always as real as we'd like to believe it is. There are material inequalities, and therefore some people are more deserving of more help than others, so that everybody gets, again, to that equal level playing field. So just, again, these aren't in the text, so just know these three terms here. They're in the slides. That's what you need to know about them. So now we're going to take a look at the code and social justice. So this is a major core value of the National Association of Social Workers Code of Ethics. Social justice. You should challenge social injustice is what it's pushing for here. And I bolded some of the more important parts here. Pursue social change and change that focus primarily on poverty, unemployment, discrimination, those sorts of things. And strive to ensure access to needed information, services, resources. So what social justice is more aligns with equity of what we were looking at in the last slides there in the last video. Is trying to level that playing field. It says everybody needs help, but some people are going to need more help than others. And what your job as in the helping professions, especially in social work, is to try to not only get that for your clients, but for segments of society that need it the most there. So when you see this in section 6.01, sorry. And again, this just says you should promote general welfare of society from both local to global levels, help people, communities, and advocate for living conditions that help everyone. So this is really about human rights there, social welfare, helping those who are most vulnerable and need it the most. This should be a guiding force, a guiding view and value in your work. It also says now how do you affect that change? And section 6.04 talks about this and social and political action, right? And so this is social workers should engage in social and political action to ensure that people have equal access to resources and should advocate for change in policy. Now, how do you do this? There are some that, you go to protest, you write letters, you push within agencies, you try to bring these issues to the forefront, and you try to get our elected representatives to react and to help with these. So everybody should be, this is part of the job, is what's saying. You're going to be the voice for those who maybe don't have a voice, and you should elevate their voices and increase the volume of it, is really what we're going for here. And so a lot of people do get involved in this. You're going to be working mostly with individual clients, but part of your job, again, is to push for the resources to be able to help them. And if you work for the state or other agencies like that, it's going to be mean bigger budgets, more funding, or tapping nonprofits and those that can funnel these resources in there. Again, continuing with social and political action. Part of this is also encouraging respect for cultural and social diversity within the U.S. and globally. And again, so it's pushing for, and you can see this at the bottom here in bold, promote policies that safeguard the rights of and confirm equity and social justice for all people. So what this means is really you're pushing for not just your individual client, but for everybody. We're a diverse society. We're a pluralistic society. And so everybody should be helped equally, not just the dominant groups, dominant classes, whatever you want to look at here. So this is saying everybody. It doesn't matter if they're immigrants, doesn't matter if they're the color of their skin, their religion, sexual orientation, anything. Everybody should be getting the same rights, and part of your job is pushing for this. But one of the issues here, and those are what we looked at in the last couple of slides, there are the big values, right? These are big overarching values. However, we want to pursue social justice, but one of the problems is going to be limited resources. And so let's just take a look at this in overview. Social justice is a key value, yet the reality is there are finite resources, right? I mentioned this in the first video. We'd love to help everybody, but we don't have all the money to help everybody. We don't have all the resources to get everybody what they need. So that means that equal distribution of these resources is not always possible, right? They're not going to help everybody equally. So in a perfect world, we would be able to help everybody equally, but that's not always possible, right? We have to realize that there is limited resources, time, money, all those sorts of things. So what does that mean for us here? And what are some of these factors of what I talk about? Time, inequality, societal factors, right? Who is deemed worthy? Diversity, discrimination, again, limited material resources. In a perfect world, social justice would be easy to achieve because everybody can have everybody can have access, but it's not always going to be the case. One of the biggest ones you're going to face, though, in your own individual work is going to be time. You're going to have lots of clients, and you're going to have limited amount of time. You're going to want to devote as much time possible to each client, but you're also going to have to get through your caseload. There's only so many hours in a day. And there's only so often you can work, right? We don't work 24 hours a day, and for good reason. So we're going to have to find. We're going to be limited in what we can do. And so the dilemmas are going to be what to do about that. And so, and this is the dilemma here, right? An ethical dilemma occurs when available resources are limited and choices have to be made about who will receive services. And you can see some of this, I mentioned some of this in the notes, and it's talked about in the books, is if you only have so much resources, who gets it? How do we make those decisions? And these are, unfortunately, they are real world choices sometimes, right? Sometimes you have to decide, rationing care, rationing the food, the money that you have out there. Hard, difficult choices need to be made, and it's not clear that there's any one right answer. And they usually rely on utilitarian approaches to do this, with both all the negatives or critiques of that can come with it. But let's look at this limitation of time. So time is a limited and precious resource. We know this, right? How do you divide your time for direct care, right? Direct services to clients. Say you have an 8-hour day, you're seeing clients. How many clients can you see? How much time do you devote to each one? These are questions you're going to have to consider. Does everyone need the same amount of time that day? Or do people need several hours devoted to one client, right? So what happens if you have a client that has an emergency? Is it ethical to devote several hours to that one client? I mean, our first instinct is usually say, yes, they need help. But the question then, what about all those other clients? All these other clients had appointments that day. What do you do with them? Do you just blow them off? You haven't met with them yet. You don't know if they have emergencies themselves. So by saying giving all the time you have to your first client, you could be directly or indirectly hurting other clients that day. These are the types of things we're talking about. And this will be the journal assignment for this exemplar 9.1 on page 175. Answer these questions. I'll obviously put these on the journal assignment as well. So read through this and read through the exemplar and respond to these questions. Again, this is really about you have a client that needs emergency care. They don't bring, they have an emergency. They need more time. They didn't raise this issue until like the last minutes of your session with them. Now the problem is you clearly need to help this client, but you have a line of clients waiting for you. What do you do? That's the question explored here. So this one is unfortunately becoming more of a reality in some places. Limited medical resources and ethics of prioritizing. This is something that has been discussed in the past, often hypothetically, but is increasingly, unfortunately, seeming people are going to actually employing these ideas. So. The belief is that all people, or at least some would argue this, entitled to best medical services, right? Everybody's entitled to medical care, or should be entitled to medical care. Problem is it right that medical resources, especially scarce or expensive, are distributed equally, regardless of age or prior conditions or what they're in? Really, this is saying is if you can only save some people, right? We want to save everybody, but we can only save some. Who do we choose? How do we choose them? Unfortunately, this is a question that many have had to grapple with, doctors, public health officials, and they've had to make real world choices. And you can see in the text, what the way they usually do this is they go through, right? They're going to try to say, I mean, there's a various approaches to this. One is, do we value the young over the old, right? Because they have more life to give. The others have, what if you're well, what about your job? Do we take your job into account? What are you working on? Is your job necessary? Can it lead to benefits? Like think someone working on a cure for cancer or a vaccine or something like that. Should they be given priority over others? These are really the questions. And again, it does take equalitarian approach. Equalitarian, I mean, the pros and cons of this is give it to everybody equally. Well, some people are going to die and others won't. Some people will be helped. Maybe some people are going to be helped that and they're going to go on and not live that long afterwards, and they're not going to contribute that much. This is, again, gets into a very utilitarian really discussion here. And what do you choose? How do you choose it? There are no right answers. Some say you shouldn't make these choices. You should just do the best you can. But as the reality plays out, these questions do need to be made here. Again, do you do it on potential return to society, right? Help the youngest because they have their most of life to give and to contribute to society. But what's the drawback in that? Just because you're older doesn't mean you have nothing to contribute, right? How do you know this? You can't predict the future. This is the problem with utilitarianism that we've recognized earlier, that we saw the critiques of it, is you can't predict the future. You have to hope that you can predict this. The problem here can be the slippery slope idea, and there's a couple of videos on there describing on Blackboard, very, very brief ones about the slippery slope. In short, slippery slope incrementalism is the idea that as you take smaller and smaller steps that you can, sort of justify, right? Behaviors or actions that you might not normally have gone with, but you begin to justify. Eventually, you're going to find yourself inching closer and closer to this slope where you're just going to slide down into something completely unethical. The problem is you won't know it until you get there, right? That's the slippery slope. And the slippery slope examples from history of this is that where does this lead, right? Do you say you're getting rid of some? I mean, the Nazis in some ways made arguments of this, right? The Holocaust didn't just start with mass executions of undesirables. They started with certain groups, the T4 program, where they got rid of the mentally disabled, and others euthanized them and began to go further. And so once you start, the fear is once you start putting values on human life based on their jobs, their age, that sort of thing, this can get very dark and very wrong, and it can lead to horrible, horrible consequences, many would say. But then again, in certain cases, you're going to have to make these decisions and hope they don't stick into this slippery slope. But the problem is, how do you not go down that slippery slope? I wish I had the answers. It is difficult to say the least. I don't. But this is one of the issues. Again, it's been theorized about in the past, but it has actually come to pass that these questions need to be asked, plans need to be made, and in some instances, actual actions were taken and are taken on this, where you have limited amount of resources. They only got to go to some, but some will suffer and die. You have to make those hard choices and hope that you're made the right choice. But again, that's a big hope there for this. And you can see some of these exemplars here in 9.2 on page 178. So what we're going to do is we'll pick up here on societal responses to distribution of scarce resources in lecture video 3 for chapter 9.